welcome to the 5th session of the GMIS Digital Series, and therefore to a session about industry innovations, especially talking about AI-powered robotics. My name is Suzanne Schone, and I have the big pleasure to guide you through that session. You all know that automation has been prevalent since the 1970s. Advances in technologies, including robotics, big data, machine learning, IoT, artificial intelligence, and robotics, have improved the factory production since then. So in this session, we will share with you some insights on robotic trends that are driving the evolution of manufacturing automation. And the automotive industry is one very good example for that. So I'm very happy about my guest today. His name is Matthias Schindler, and he is the head of AI innovation at the BMW Group. Matthias, good to see you.
Hi, Susanne. Good to see you. Thanks for having me here.
So Matthias, today we would like to talk about how AI-powered robotics can help to reinvent the shop floor to meet today's demands.
Yeah, Susanne, this is what we want to talk about today. Of course, AI is one special driver in manufacturing at these days. For sure, robotic is another one. And of course, these two things are strongly connected and interact together.
Maybe we can start with this. Can you give us some insights about how AI already supports the decision-making mechanism in the manufacturing facilities?
Yeah, for sure, Susanne. On the one hand, when it comes to big data, of course, AI is one of the main topics we discuss. Of course, we are only capable of analyzing these huge amounts of data with the help of AI. As you might imagine, we have lots of production processes going on where we measure a lot of information. So a lot of data is being collected, sometimes even with up to 1000 hertz, which means 1000 measurements per second. And if you want to identify good as well as bad pattern, of course, AI can help us in that specific case, analyzing all these data. So one very first area of application where AI comes into play and machine learning plays an important role is data analytics. Throughout all the single technologies in car manufacturing, it can be applied to all the special technologies when it comes to manufacturing.
So if we have a closer look into the future, what do you think? Will manufacturing business models adapt so that they are completely provided by robots? Also talking about your traditional suppliers, will they be replaced by collaborative robots?
I myself do not believe in that case. We at BMW Group, we always believe in the technology. It needs to serve people. But on the one hand, we don't want it to replace the people. We would rather strive for the best division of labor, which would mean robots can do the repetitive tasks, which are physically demanding and where high loads needs to be handled, for example. But only the human being can see, for example, our products, which is cars, with the eyes of the customer. And so this is why we believe in humans to really give the finesse to all of our products. So this means we would not replace humans, but of course we want to look for tasks which are highly demanding, physically demanding, and we try to deploy robots whenever it's possible, which can mean that sometimes people or human beings and robots really collaborate, which is when we call the thing cobot, so real cooperation of human and robot. But we don't believe that it would replace any of our employees, neither one of our suppliers.
I think that's a very important point for a lot of people out there. You know, I host a lot of events about digitization, robotics, automation, and so on. And at least always a couple of people are like really scared. They're scared of losing their job. So can you give us some insights about how was the feedback from the workers at BMW when you started working with AI?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to AI, we always try to design solutions in a way that our employees can use them. So one important step is we don't want to have data science bringing the AI into the shop floor and then leaving shop floor, but we rather want to design all the solutions in a way that this is accessible via a self-service for our production employees. This is a very important thing, which means on the one hand, we have a very close collaboration during the design phase of all these components. For example, when we apply artificial intelligence, for example, for object detection in quality work or thing like that, we always design the solution that a shop floor employee can operate it. In our case, that means, for example, we defined a labeling tool to label pictures for object detection, which is pretty easy to use. So you only pull rectangles more or less around an object you want to identify. And that was designed in a very easy way. So we always tried what is the feedback from our operators from production. And we have this, what we call closed loop or agile development process, where we try to have short design circles and where we always ask for the direct feedback of the end user or the end customer.
Perfect. I think let's stick a little bit more with this topic, talking about digital humanism. You already mentioned that you are not going directly from low-skilled labor to automation. That is a kind of a process. But what do you think? What are still the challenges in this process?
Of course, it's pretty hard to find the engineers or the IT guys that know both worlds. On the one hand, it's regarding the wording or the vocabulary, of course. On the other hand, they must understand production processes to know how to design a solution. So this is why we neither want our production employees to become data scientists. Of course, that would be tough. They would have to go to university for a month or sometimes even years, which is not feasible. On the other hand, we have to convince our production employees what are the advantages of new technologies like robots, like AI. And this is why we did two very large communication campaigns when it comes to AI in specific. On the one hand, we want to offer the benefits AI brings with it. On the other hand, we want to teach in a very easy way our employees what do they have to invest when it comes to AI, because AI is nothing which comes for free, but you have to invest some effort at the beginning to set up solutions which are much more robust than seen in the past.
Okay, wonderful. So you kind of mentioned that already in the beginning, but I still want to ask again. If we have a closer look into the future, not in the near future, but in the far future, what do you think, what would be left for the workforce once robots are deployed on the workshop floor? Are we entering a new area of white-collar humans and blue-collar robots in the manufacturing sector?
One important task we would always see is teaching or programming the robot, which is of course very important, and you need high-skilled labor in that case. Another thing which will be present is maintenance. Of course, these things need to be maintained either on a hardware side or in the software side. For example, if you have to integrate a new car, you will integrate new features, and they would not be learned by an AI on its own, but you have to have people teaching it. But I would not say that all the blue collar stuff would put into robots. We rather believe in technology needs to serve people, which means you would see a little bit better, probably the division of labor, which will have more attractive workplaces in production, which is one aspect, because the work would not be that kind of challenging or physically demanding. So it's rather convenient to work in production, but it will be still attractive and hopefully even more attractive than it is today.
Technology serves the people. That's a wonderful final words, but I still have one last question left. Whenever we talk about these new technologies, we also need to talk about cybersecurity. What's your experience with that in the company?
Yeah, cybersecurity is a very important issue, especially when it comes to production. Of course, nobody wants its equipment to be hacked by anybody doing some harm. So this is on the one hand why we try to separate our production IT infrastructure from the internet in general. Of course, it is pretty important to focus on that kind of division. On the other hand, we try to maintain the hardware, which can mean that we really need to replace our computers running in the production to update them to the latest operating system, which is modern and pretty secure. On the other hand, when it comes to AI, we design solutions in a way that they are capsuled, which means we train, for example, an AI model, we deploy it, but we don't make it train itself or improve itself while running. But we want a human to be in the control loop, which on the one hand means whenever they need to change something, there is a human who is really doing these changes and who is really securing these changes to test it before releasing it. And on the other hand, we still stick to the division between internet, which is more or less the outer world, and production, which should be separate in that way that nobody can hack it from the outside.
So I want to stick to your final words. Technology serves the people. So once again, we can see that here, and technology is checked by people. That's a very important part. What I would also like to add is, I have the feeling that if we have a look into the near and the far future, I think we all agree that AI is not any longer a luxury. It's more or less a must-have, or what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. On the one hand, we see modern solutions can be much more robust, can be easier to ramp up than more or less old school solutions. So this is why AI will really find its way into production. And the feedback from our workers really is they understand how quickly it is possible to set up an AI and how easy it is to interact with it. So after teaching them a little what to bring to train an AI, they are really happy that we brought it, and they really bring new use cases to us and say, can you help me here because I don't like that kind of task? Can you automate that so that I have more time, for example, for creative work or for value-added tasks, and not only controlling what my colleague probably did? So this is pretty much it. So this way, AI will find into production, and this is how we can keep production a attractive workplace.
Matthias, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your knowledge with us. That was a very interesting, quick chat about industry innovations, about AI-powered robotics, and how the future is going to look like. So thanks for taking the time. And you, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for the second part of this session.
Suzanne, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Pleasure. Hello and a warm welcome to session number 5 of the GMIS Digital Series. My name is Suzanne Schone, and I have the big pleasure to guide you through this session. For those of you just tuning in right now, this GMIS session is about how the manufacturing industry has changed in the past years. We all know that especially the manufacturing automation has changed due to new technologies like big data, machine learning, IoT, artificial intelligence, and robotics. And in this session, we will especially talk about how AI-driven robotics can help to improve the factory floor. And we want to explore how robots could be used to meet our production needs during the remote work nature of a pandemic, a capability no longer considered as optional. So I'm very, very happy about my guest in this session. His name is Paul Wellener. He is the Vice Chairman for the US Industrial Products and Services sector at Deloitte. Paul, it's good to see you.
Well, thanks, Suzanne. Glad to be here, and really looking forward to our session here today. You know, I've spent 30 plus years in the manufacturing industry, and looking forward to sharing some of those experiences.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that you take the time for that. I would say, Paul, let's jump directly into the topic. Let's deep dive into the topic, which is so interesting. And let's start with the topic on all manufacturers' minds today, the disruption that the pandemic has brought to production, and how and whether automation can offer any solutions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're certainly in unprecedented times today in manufacturing, with many companies really having to change the way that they've operated literally overnight. We've seen examples of the power of automation in lots of different production facilities recently, but very few manufacturers are equipped for kind of almost a complete lights out production environment. And they're really going to need to transform, over the next several months and years into kind of new environments. Not an immediate solution to the pandemic for most manufacturers, but something that they can aspire to. Last year we did a study jointly with MAPI, Manufacturers Alliance for Productivity and Innovation, with over 600 respondents, and we discussed kind of many of the different ways that people were adapting to kind of technology. And little less than 20% of the people were really trailblazers as it related to kind of their digital transformations. And that's what we're going to see throughout the conversation today, is that, those folks that are on the leading edge are doing some things, but there's a large group of people in the middle that are kind of waiting to see and have been forced by the kind of the pandemic on a global basis to step in and do some things differently, usually on a scale that's not kind of across the business, but it's enough of a scale to start to see some of the benefits. We've seen kind of with factory ramp ups and factory restarts that people are really, kind of doing things differently. In certain industries, it is complete restart because those industries were shut down. In other places, it's been much more of a modification and adaptation of new work practices to really to try to, keep people safe, to continue to meet production needs for businesses that were deemed essential, but to do it with specific guidelines that focus on both worker safety and, worker health. As production managers in various different facilities are trying to kind of build those physical distancing guidelines in consultation with, labor unions and consultation with government organizations and, and health officials, they're looking for options that would help add automation to human-centered and line-oriented, compliance and safety. And this can't happen with just kind of the snap of a finger overnight. So manufacturers that were already on that path, like I mentioned, those trailblazers, they were better able to transform their environments, more quickly. While those that, are less experienced with automation and less experienced with robotics or artificial intelligence or many of the tools that you mentioned in introduction, are further behind in trying to do that and have rapidly had to, kind of take a bath, if you will, in this whole area of automation and artificial intelligence. Robots and artificial intelligence have been used in, novel ways, since the start of the, the current pandemic. Robots have been deployed to, to sense heat or temperature or identify situations where workers might have, kind of elevated temperatures, and therefore they can use, technology to help keep, workers safe. Vision systems are being utilized to identify hotspots, in factories. Tracking software is being utilized to, help keep track of workers who might have had an elevated temperature and know where they've been, to be able to, quickly identify places where there might be future issues. Artificial intelligence is also kind of very key part of the world of IoT or internet, connected devices that might be, connected to wearables that workers are utilizing these days to help maintain social distancing. We're also seeing an increased utilization of conveyance robots, so kind of moving material handling, from one place to another. Given workers are now spread out, a little bit further apart, they're not densely packed in, kind of just-in-time assembly lines. They're now a little, social distancing is requiring 6 foot of separation. And these kinds of, technologies are helping, companies move that material while trying to maintain some level of production efficiency. And as companies move into what we will call we're calling the recovery and thriving phases of the kind of the down that was caused by the pandemic, they're going to increasingly look to different kinds of technologies like AI and automation to really support their journey and do it in a safe and effective fashion for their people.
Absolutely agree. Let's jump back to something you said in the very beginning. For all these changes, time is needed. But if we have a look into the future, what do you think? Will the manufacturing business models adapt so that services are completely provided by robots? I mean, will traditional production workers be replaced by robots? What do you think?
Well, Suzanne, interesting question, and it's so far into the future, right? You can kind of create a time horizon that's 100 years. We don't know what will happen, and you might say that things are going to be completely automated. But 100 years ago, people were saying the same thing about today, that ultimately things were going to be completely automated. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. We've been watching the rise of the robot or robotics, or automation in manufacturing for quite some time. And, and repeatedly studies have been, saying that services and process, in manufacturing will not really ever be completely replaced by robots, but they're going to be more enhanced, or made better by the utilization of robotic automation. I mean, if you think about the diversity of everything that gets manufactured in our society today, from the smallest of microchips, to the largest of, aircraft engines and aircraft fuselages, you'd see how impossible it is to really replace that production completely with robots. You'll see in specific areas of production, in each of those cases, you'll see tasks that are highly repetitive that are really great cases for automation. In other places, there's an opportunity to augment more than replace those human activities, utilizing kind of robots that help with exoskeleton maneuvers or help in the forms of, material handling or physically taxing activities, or help to identify quality defects in a line. This is particularly true for tasks that are physically dangerous to humans, like, sometimes material handling movements or other kinds of, motion in an assembly line process. And again, our MAPI study from last year looked at material handling, frankly, as one of those. We had 8 great use cases, but it was one of those great use cases. In offloading those kinds of tasks may make sense, and may make sense to happen much more rapidly, in this pandemic, post-COVID world. To get to the point of your question, though, humans will not be replaced, but rather augmented by robots where it makes sense from both an efficiency and a safety standpoint. And I think both of those are highly desirable outcomes. Safety, just kind of given, historical focus on safety, but an additional dimension today with worker safety because of the pandemic. And then obviously, efficiency and effectiveness to be able to, cost effectively manufacture components or parts.
So very much agree with all you said. Let's jump to nowadays. What do you think? How does AI already support the decision-making mechanism in manufacturing facilities? Can you share any insights on that with us?
Yes, artificial intelligence has had a significant impact on manufacturing, and we can't overstate that impact, even though we're in the early stages of that evolution, for many capabilities. It's enabled manufacturers to glean a wide range of insights from all the data that they've been capturing through kind of the connected equipment on their shop floor, and even through connected products that they may have out in the field. If you take that data, identify issues related to throughput or quality, it can have a significant impact on productivity and profitability. And can also, in today's world, have an impact on, as I said, safety and efficiency. In our ongoing studies as it relates to the state of artificial intelligence in the enterprise, we've identified 2 major impacts that are benefits to manufacturers. Number 1, better decision-making capabilities, and number 2, really a reduction in process inefficiencies. The decision-making mechanism of artificial intelligence can really be seen across a number of use cases that we've identified in kind of that area of smart factories. And again, these are connected to the kind of quote unquote 8 great use cases that we developed, last year with our study with MAPI. Use cases can take business issues or processes and apply technology to them to make them, better and have better outcomes. For example, one smart factory use case, again, kind of identified last year, and something that's been a use case of how do we apply automation to it is ever since I started as a shop floor supervisor, 30 years ago in an automotive assembly plant, was quality sensing and detecting of, product potential failures or issues as it relates to, those manufacturing processes. So whether it's real-time equipment monitoring, it's visual analytics, it's inline quality testing, all of those capabilities with an analytics and artificial intelligence engine behind them, can really, improve situations. At the core of AI is that, faster quality and faster error detection, which, human operators just can never kind of keep pace with that. But it's how do you take that human operator knowledge and kind of incorporate it into, artificial intelligence tools that can help us make a more high quality product, from the start. And ultimately, I think you alluded to kind of losing jobs. It's much more about, how to maintain employment and how to make things better and maybe increase the opportunity for employment versus decrease the opportunity for employment. Another one of the use cases that, again, we've identified, many manufacturers have identified this, is around maintenance and maintenance of shop floor assets and leveraging artificial intelligence, to know the appropriate time to make changes as it relates to, those pieces of equipment. Internet of Things or connected devices on the shop floor can really, take data from a variety of different sources, whether that's new equipment or retrofit equipment, and all that data can be utilized to generate insights on those assets. And, production managers or maintenance supervisors are going to be able to better, handle kind of downtime to maintenance needs to equipment failures and all those kinds of things that might impact productivity. So the leveraging of that, kind of that horsepower associated with the artificial intelligence engine with some typically in use data collection technologies is really where the power comes to play.
Thank you, Paul, so much for these highly interesting examples, how we can already benefit from artificial intelligence technologies. Let's talk a bit more about the people. Let's talk about digital humanism. What do you think about all the challenges from jumping from low-skilled labor to automation directly?
Well, we've not seen many companies be able to make this jump in kind of the click of a light switch, that's for sure. It's been an evolution in technology that has evolved in our workplace. It's not been an overnight change. Our human capital trends study that we do on an annual basis, identifies this ongoing dynamic between humans and machines and the need for the combination of both to truly enable a workforce of the future. Again, in our most recent study, only about 12% of the respondents said their organizations were primarily using automation and AI to replace workers. Well, 60%, the vast majority, were using it as an asset to help support, workforce. And those, who remain in the study haven't meaningfully implemented it as of yet. But, that 60%, and we see that across all types of different studies that we do, whether it's in human capital or factory of the future or artificial intelligence, we see that the large number of employers are utilizing artificial intelligence to improve the world for their employees. Among the reasons for kind of evolving toward, a human automation combination is that because humans often hold the, very important experiences that help us, kind of deal with the nuances of a process or a series of tasks, that when you team a robot and an artificial intelligence with a human, you kind of get the best of all worlds. That human machine teaming approach, conserves the community knowledge that comes out of a, kind of a manufacturing resources while refining and improving processes in a way that help improve productivity, efficiency, and safety. We've developed a lot of these kind of futuristic personas that are now, we're starting to see utilized in the manufacturing world, and we're seeing that, we think over the next 3 to 5 years, a lot of these personas will help support the migration to technology.
That's good to know, Paul. So what do you think? What would be left for the workforce once robots are deployed on the workshop floor? Are we entering a new era of white-collar humans and blue-collar robots on the manufacturing sector?
Well, as I said, our research has identified kind of a wave of kind of, new types of personas. And, there's more of kind of a rise of the no-collar workforce, one that reflects this kind of hybrid between, kind of where we were in the past and where we think we might be in the future, with a kind of a hybrid of the man-machine environment with a single kind of loop feedback mechanism, et cetera, as it relates to productivity. Currently, technology can't duplicate uniquely what happens, with humans in the workplace, and it definitely cannot duplicate, persuasion or problem solving skills or empathy or verbal comprehension. This kind of no-collar trend takes some of those softer pieces that come out of the human and kind of combines them with some of the, the more structured pieces that come out of kind of robots as well as artificial intelligence type environments. And as I said, we've seen this development of future of work personas that describe how jobs could change with the rise of advanced technologies and digitization. And part of that research that we've done identified a number of new jobs and roles that will likely become commonplace in kind of smart manufacturing, artificial intelligence, kind of new technology worlds, once we're well past, the pandemic of, the current today, that's driving a lot of rapid changes. We'll see things like a robot teaming coordinator. So how do you train humans and robots to work together, or kind of banks of robots with banks of people working together to kind of get, an output to a better place. We'll start to see people who kind of leverage digital tools in a very different fashion. We'll see people who work with control towers and, kind of digital supply networks in a different fashion. We'll see things with digital twins, and digital twin coordinators that take place. We'll see some enhanced roles in the areas that I mentioned earlier where we've had these 8 great use cases. We'll see enhanced roles in quality. We'll see enhanced roles in jobs, kind of in the area of material handling and material movement. Manufacturers are really, very innovative people, and they will continue to explore how, advanced technology will be able to be utilized to increase efficiency and productivity with humans as a key part of the process. And I think the COVID pandemic world of today has thrown safety kind of much more to the forefront. All those pieces will come together, and I think ultimately we'll land in a better place when it comes to that intersection of robotics, artificial intelligence, and kind of the man-machine interface that we're talking about here this morning.
Paul, thank you so much. I couldn't wish for a better sum up, for better final words than these. Thank you very, very much for being with us today, for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us. It was a real pleasure to have you.
Suzanne, thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I'm sure there was plenty of food for thought inside. Please stay curious, keep the conversation going, and of course, stay tuned for the rest of the GMIS Digital Series.